nothing is worse than going into a movie knowing it's not going to be very good, watching it, and still being upset with how bad it actually was. So, Robert Rodriguez clearly watched a bunch of Christopher Nolan movies, and then he was like, okay, I want to do that. And then he did, but he didn't actually learn why any of those movies are good. He didn't actually understand why people watch them over and over again, because it's not just because they have a funny plot twist. It's not because people are like, wow, I can't believe he did that. No, it's because they're actually fun. People like the characters. People like the action sequences. It's well directed. They feel inspired. And his movie is none of those things. It's not inspired. It's derivative. It's boring. It's not fun to rewatch. You feel more dumb after it than you did before. And it's just bad. It's a bad time. And I'm surprised that this got $65 million, because the money isn't there. The money isn't put in the movie. The movie looks cheap. It looks made for TV. It looks like something off the CW. So I hope that off a budget of $65 million, 64 went to Ben Affleck, because clearly it wasn't put into the movie. And if it was, whoever financed it needs to go get their money back, because it was clearly wasted on something this bad. And so I'm just going to go ahead and summarize the plot. This movie is bad. You don't need to watch it. I'm going to spoil all of it anyways, and I hope that by the end of this, you feel just as dumb as I do. But this, it's bad. And he should feel bad for making it. So the movie starts with Ben Affleck as a cop in therapy, which is great. Yes, Hawkeye's, in therapy, that's great. And we find out his daughter was kidnapped a couple years ago. And then his wife left him, which is also sad. So he's basically just like a sad single bachelor cop, which, okay, boohoo, cry about it. So he's like, hey, I want to return to work. And his therapist is like, are you ready? And he's like, yeah. So he leaves therapy, which I guess that was all he needed to do or whatever, was just cry about it a bit. So he goes down and he joins up with his sidekick, and they're his sidekick's like, okay, we have an armed robbery we have to go attend to. And he was like, okay, cool. So they get tipped off about this armed robbery. That's going to happen. It hasn't happened yet, which, okay, seated. We love men fighting crime. And they're checking out the security cameras in this police truck, trying to stop this robbery. And we see our villain, who we know as bad because Ben Affleck is like, that guy looks familiar. So Villain Man turns to this woman on the bench and says, quote, it's hot today. It's like a furnace, end quote. And she proceeds to then strip in public, which I guess is just showing us that he has mind control abilities or whatever. But Ben Affleck thinks she's in on it too. And this guy keeps walking up to people and saying weird phrases to them, which Ben Affleck thinks means it's a code, but we know it's something crazier because we read the little short paragraph before the movie, so we already know it's mind control. Anyways, so while I should also note that nothing that happens in the first hour of this movie actually matters, but it later gets retconned. But the lady that the guy came up to and was like, it's really hot today, and then she started stripping, she walks into the street because she's too focused on stripping, and it causes a 4-car pileup, along with one of the drivers being thrown out forward through the windshield, which it's weird because I'm not entirely sure Ben Affleck was actually looking while this happened, and of course it gets explained later what actually is going on. But I just want to know did this how did they, okay, well, maybe we'll just talk about that later. But Ben Affleck needs to get inside the bank so he can stop the crime. So instead of going inside the bank and being like, hey, I'm a cop, we have a tip off that there's going to be this armed robbery, I think we need to get some stuff sorted out here so we can make sure it doesn't happen. He just goes up to one of the bank tellers, doesn't tell him that he's a cop, and is just like, I need to open up a safe deposit box. And I guess that's just a really quick process that doesn't need any paperwork. I mean, I guess it all gets, retcon later, so they technically don't need to do any of that. But regardless, that's like how he decides to go about it, which I just think is kind of bizarre, since he's like this really like esteemed cop. But he gets inside the safe room that has all the safe boxes, and inside the box that they were like tipped off about that was going to be stolen, it's a picture of his daughter, which dun dun dun, like really, really big deal that there's a picture of his daughter in there. And on the picture, it says at the bottom, find Lev Del Rain, which, I mean, is just kind of a stupid name, but, like, whatever. He has to find Lev Del Rain. And there's just a lot of logic issues throughout this whole movie, and it's not approached in, like, a self-aware way. It's just sort of, like, it's just played straight for the first hour of the movie. Like, it's just straight, standard thriller. And so all the logic issues are just kind of apparent, and the movie isn't really like self-aware of the fact that nothing that happens like in this part of the movie is like normal. But regardless, he's in the safe deposit room, and the villain guy comes, and he has his little hypnotized army, and Ben Affleck gets absolutely bodied by a shotgun, which is just kind of never touched on again, which, I mean, obviously he's wearing like a bulletproof vest, but from what I understand, you would still like really hurt. It would still really hurt to get like bodied by a shotgun blast, and he gets thrown back. And so that just kind of never gets touched on again. He just is like, damn, I got bodied by a shotgun. I mean, obviously, bulletproof vest, but still. And we also get a nice shot of the "it's hot like a furnace" lady to remind us that, he hypnotizes people and they're really stuck like that, which, crazy. So regardless, we get on this really boring chase scene, and we go to the rooftop of this building, and Ben Affleck and villain guy are talking, and the tables get turned on him, and the cops he's with end up being hypnotized, and they kill each other, although they technically don't kill each other. But regardless, he hypnotizes them and then jumps off a building and disappears. So he runs away. Ooh, great escape. So he also tells us that he is kind of involved with taking his daughter, which I guess that's a big deal, a big deal that he has his daughter, man. Ben Affleck wants his daughter back, womp womp. But afterwards, Ben Affleck is sad because he misses his daughter, which we also don't learn anything about her really, besides the fact that he misses her, which is kind of unfortunate because the whole movie revolves around getting her back, and we don't get any shots of him and his daughter. We just know he's sad about it. We don't know anything about her, which is upsetting because the whole movie revolves around her. But he's sad, and they trace the call that tipped them off to this woman, so they're gonna go talk to her. And he goes to this like psychic parlor, and it was going to be a lore dump, but then the villain guy shows up, so it wasn't going to be a lore dump. Dun dun dun, ruins it, and then they run away, and then we get the actual lore dump and the police in the police room, which I'm just like, why'd you fake us? It just kind of felt stupid, but whatever. So the entire premise of the movie, obviously, it involves hypnosis, which, I mean, I was interested in beforehand. But there's some people, this lady Diana explains that there's some people who have the ability to control people telepathically via hypnosis. And I was gonna include like all the logic breaking, just how horrible that the premise is explained. Just because, I mean, I think we can all think of a bunch of ways where hypnosis, if they were really powerful people who could, I mean, we later see people like whole crowds hypnotized. We see people hypnotized over the phone. We see people hypnotized like while the hypnotizer is blindfolded, so they don't even have to be making eye contact. Because it's sort of explained here, like, oh, when you look someone directly in the eyes and you talk, some people have the power by doing that to hypnotize them, but then we see people do it over the phone. So I'm not really sure how it works, and it's not explained how. We're sort of told later, like, oh well, some people are just a bit stronger than other people who can do it. They call them hypnotics, which I think is stupid, but some hypnotics are stronger than others, so that's why they can do it over the phone or something. I'm like, what? Okay, kind of like really stupid, and it kind of just gets explained later that, well, some people are mentally prepped to stop hypnosis, which I'm like, okay, so I mean, you can think of literally every single way that just doesn't work. And also, they control the world, which also is like gestured at later, but also this isn't something people know. Like, your common person doesn't know that hypnosis, how it, like, that it exists, even though if it was controlling, like, it makes me angry. And they also explain hypnosis as being, it's not that you're a robot. Like, if I hypnotize you, you just don't turn into a robot that follows my every word. You instead are like, you see the world. I give you a command. If I'm just like, hey, well, so we saw earlier in the movie, the villain guy goes up to this bank teller and he's like, actually, it's afternoon right now. And she's like, you're right, it is afternoon. And she like closes her window and goes to the safe deposit room, I guess, because that's what she does in the afternoon. And I mean, first off, literally every single hypnotized person acts like a robot. But I do think it was interesting, this idea, like, oh, I'm just going to say how I would interpret it. Like, you're still a regular person, but the way you see the world changes. So if someone hypnotizes you to say, oh, actually it's afternoon right now, you're like, oh yeah, it is afternoon. And then you just, you're still a person, but your worldview has changed a little bit, like your perception. But no, that's, I think Robert Rodriguez wanted to seem highbrow by saying, well, actually, I'm just changing your perception of the world to, and then you just fit that, yourself. No, you're just a robot. When someone's hypnotized, they just turn into robots. So that's disappointing, I guess. Which would have been interesting because, earlier in the movie when the guy was like, oh, actually it's really hot outside, and then she starts tripping, like, it would have been interesting if, she was still a normal person, but, oh, I am starting to feel like really hot, like, and then she just still is normal, but she also thinks it's hot. But no, they're robots. But again, none of it actually matters at this point because up until this point, and also until 60 minutes into the movie, none of this matters. It all gets retconned later. So, yep, there's a lore dump. The Diana, she actually proves, because this entire time, Ben Affleck does not think hypnosis is real. He's like, no, this is all just one big op and everyone's in on it. But she's like, no, I can actually hypnotize your partner. And then he gets hypnotized, which, okay, cool. So we find out also the villain, this Find Lev Del Rey thing that Ben Affleck saw on the card. Lev Del Rey's actually a villain. So I guess the villain guy was going into this safe deposit box to find a picture of Ben Affleck's daughter that says Find Lev Del Rey, which actually isn't what's going on because that gets retconned later. But Lev Del Rey, all you need to know is he's the villain, and he's the most powerful hypnotic in the entire world, and he comes back, and he mind controls Ben Affleck's sidekick into trying to kill Ben Affleck, which is probably one of the funniest scenes in the movie, because Ben Affleck his sidekick's hypnotized, and he's trying to kill Ben Affleck, like really trying, like he gets handcuffed to the jail bars, but he's still trying so hard to kill Ben Affleck. And this entire time, Ben Affleck's like, no, stop it. No, don't stop. You're my friend. You're my sidekick. You break out of it. And while he's trying to logic with his sidekick that's hypnotized, Diana is like, Ben, well, she uses his actual character's name, which is Rourke. She's like, Rourke, he's not listening. And he's like, no, don't shoot, no, stop it. And she's like, Rourke, he's not listening to you. He's never going to listen to you. So after Ben Affleck tries to logic with him a little bit more, Diana just shoots him, the sidekick, because, they didn't have a choice. I mean, clearly he was literally going to do whatever it took to kill Ben Affleck. So she shoots him. And I think that's valid. And I support her. So now they're on the run because they're suspected of murder, which I think is actually like one of them. I think that's always an interesting plot point when someone gets framed for a crime and they're on the run. So I'm seated for this. They're on the run and they go to this bar, and this is actually like one of the funnier parts, which I actually like. And this and another scene that follows shortly after, they meet this asshole cop in the bar, and he's, being an asshole, and Diana's like, hey, you should give the waitress a really big tip. He's like, yeah, you're right, I should. And he does, and I think that's valid. And I think it would be funnier if there were more scenes of them using their hypnosis powers for, like, little tiny stuff, but I thought that was pretty cute. But somehow Villain Man shows up again, which, I mean, it makes sense why he keeps showing up later. But he shows up again, and there's this really funny thing I noticed while I was, like, clipping pictures of the movie, is that he always looks so unbothered. He never looks menacing. He's just like, he does this like white guy stare, and he just kind of looks into the distance, or he looks confused or just unbothered. And I would have just loved a little maniacal smile or two, because he looks really stupid. His aura is just all over the place. But we get a scene of Ben Affleck running away from Villain Man, aka Lev Dorrain, again. And in a scene totally lifted out of Inception, they're in this train yard, and the trains bend over his head, which I'm not entirely sure how that's working, because it's not like he's close to Villain Man. I mean, I guess he's a bit close, but somehow he gets hypnotized, and his perception of the world changes. And the trains lift over his head. So that's cool, I guess. And that's also something that doesn't make entirely sense with the other hypnosis premise, because this is actually like Villain Man just changing his perception of the world, and he's still a normal person. But when every other person is hypnotized, they just become a robot they follow one command. So I just don't get how his perception is just the one being... Okay, it doesn't make sense. But regardless, the trains bend over his head, and they still escape. So that's cool, I guess. They escape from Villain Man. And Ben Affleck and Diana talk while they're on the run still. And basically, he's just not able to be hypnotized. Ben Affleck's character has a psychic block that prevents him from being hypnotized. So that's cool, I guess. And she I mean, basically every single interlude scene between, the action set pieces are just lore dumps, and it's just so surface level. And there was actually something interesting, though, that she says while they're in the car, and she's like, well, most people can't defend against hypnosis because their brain just has a simple padlock or a 1, 2, 3 code, which, we can bypass easily, which, like, okay, sure. Hypnosis is real. They don't, so they can't defend it. That's fine. And she's like, okay, Ben, you're different because your brain's like a safe. So I can't break into it, which, like, okay, whatever. So I just wish that we had maybe gotten, like, a scene visualizing this. Like, imagine if Villain Man is, like, trying to hypnotize someone, and they do a little CGI cut of her brain safe being, or like padlock being unlocked, or a little lock sound effect, or in later scenes, like showing, like, I don't know, like, just be interesting. All they do whenever someone's hypnotized is just make the camera a bit wavy, and it's just so annoying. But regardless, they're on the run still, and they go to Mexico, and she's like, you should let us through. And he's like, yeah, I should. And that's cool. Because, after that, Ben says to her, like, oh, I bet you've never gotten a speeding ticket, which is a stupid throwaway line. But, like, that's interesting. Like, imagine having this power, and you're just able to get away with, like, petty crime. Like, you're speeding and you get pulled over, and you just tell the cop, you're like, I was going the right speed, man. And he's like, you're right. Or, I don't know, like, going to the store and you just don't have to pay for shit because you're like, I already paid. And they're like, you're right, you did. Or you can just get free shit all the time. And what's crazy is it's like, also just this idea that, like, law enforcement wouldn't know that hypnosis is real. You're just having people run around with hypnosis powers, and, like, you're the government, and you just decide, like, oh, I'm just not going to train anyone. no cop is going to know that hypnosis is real. Unless what they're doing is like, okay, we're tracking every single person who has this power. We know every single person because of XYZ reason. And we literally like monitor them all the time, making sure like they're like being normal. That's another interesting premise. You have a bunch of people with this power running around. You can make it like, God, what, I forget, was it Civil War? Of Captain America Civil War that was like that? Or you know what it might have been was one of the Avengers movies where they had basically that pact where they were tracking every single person with superhero powers. I think it was more of a big deal in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. But like something like that where you have this big database of every single person, which we do see later. So that part bothers me. Like, you're really just not going to have cops know how that works, or you're not going to have your cops trained. You don't even have to tell them hypnosis is real. You can just be like, hey, I'm doing stuff to make sure people can't get information out of you or get away with stuff, and every single cop is trained. That would make sense. It's just very bad world building. Regardless, though, they make it to Mexico, and Diana's like, we're going to meet up with one of my contacts, which, like, sure, banger, sounds good. And they make it to his house, and he does another lore dump, so another interlude scene in between action set pieces that is just explaining information to us. But they're like, hey, Lev Del Rey, aka Villain Man, is after Domino, and we don't know what Domino is yet, but spooky, right? So this thing called Domino was supposed to be destroyed, and it's something that would make Lev Del Rey the most powerful hypnotic in the world, which, like, sure, sounds good. And the contact explains, it's also just that Domino's explained later, and I'm like, okay, sure, whatever, this is how you're going about it. So the contact explains that Lev Del Rey stole Domino and then wiped his own mind to hide the trail, which, like, okay, that's a bit gas, and then broke out of this secret government facility where apparently he had planted triggers, things in the world, to bring back his memory. And sure, okay. And during the last bit of this conversation, they keep cutting back to Ben Affleck's face, and he has this stoic, unemotional thing going on the entire time, and it's just so funny because you see, like, Diana, like, being kind of energetic about it, and you see this contact guy being kind of, like, energetic about it, and Ben Affleck just, like, has this, I mean, the entire movie, his face just looks like he doesn't care, which, I mean, he probably doesn't care about this movie, but it's just so whatever. Like, okay, so regardless, so we're finding out that each time Lev Del Rey gets a piece of his memory back, he gets stronger, which, okay, cool, man. So also, part of the thing that we also find out about hypnosis is that you can literally just, like, convince people you're another person, because this contact turns out to be, they were talking to Lev Del Rey the entire time, who hypnotized them to make them think he was the contact. So, which also just made me think, like, actually, they just do this later. I mean, you could just, like, hypnotize them into, like, killing themselves, which, like, sure, like, I just don't get, like, this is the whole thing that just kind of bothers me, is that watching this movie back, especially just, like, reading through the plot, it's just, like, why are we doing this? Like, it's just, it makes this part so much less fun. The whole first hour of the movie, I mean, it's tense when you're, like, watching it, but we know later that nothing bad could ever happen to these characters. So they're just going through the motions, and I just don't think it's really fun to enjoy. It's fun the first time when you think bad things could happen to them, but I mean, I'm just thinking back, okay, if Ben Affleck's character was actually in danger, which he isn't at all during this whole movie, except, like, maybe, like, 30 seconds at the end. If Lev Del Rey was so bothered by, like, Ben Affleck's character, like, if he was actually a threat, and you could hypnotize someone into thinking you're a different person, just make them kill themselves. Like, seriously, just do that. So at this point, you get another chase scene, and Lev makes the entire city chase after Ben Affleck until he's backed into a corner, which, whatever. And we also got this really trippy Inception knockoff shot, which was also really bad. And, we have the characters in their final stand, even though we're only 40 minutes into the movie. So, and this isn't really explained, and I know I already brought this up, but I don't know how this works. So is it that Lev, how is he able to control the entire city? I don't know that. But he does, and he tries to hypnotize Ben Affleck, and this is definitely one of the worst shots in the whole movie, because why is it a staring contest? All they do is they just have these really dramatic shots of Lev staring at Ben, and then Ben staring at Lev, and then the camera gets a little wavy, so we know that they're trying to do hypnosis. But oh my god, it's so boring. I wish we had maybe like a CGI shot of like what if there was a cool graphic of Lev actively trying to get into his brain, or trying to break his safe in his brain, or whatever, or Ben doing it to them, or I'm just, it's so stupid. Why is it a staring contest? Why? It's so silly. But Ben wins because he's our main character and he's special. So he has hypnosis powers, I guess, at this point, which is great. And he makes the guns turn back on Villain Man, which is great. Dub. We won. So the cops at this point arrest Villain Man, and we see one of the only slightly inspired shots in this movie of the camera looking at Diana and Ben through this gate, which is something different, but it's not particularly interesting, but I'm glad there was an effort. And because we have this new revelation that Ben is also a hypnotic, he goes into a midlife crisis, which, let's get a grip. And he repeats back to us the scene that we just saw, being like, I was able to control all those people. We know. We just saw it. And he asks Diana if she can help him figure out why his daughter's missing. Which I just want to ask him, what were we just watching for 40 minutes? She went across the border with you to get you this contact. So what do you mean, will she help you? She has been helping you. But our team of two leaves this contact who we also just found out that Lev got there beforehand, so he already knew where they were going to be. And also, was Ben just not concerned about how what was going to happen after he gets arrested, Lev gets arrested? We see the cops take him away. When they take him to the station, he's just going to leave again. So are you concerned about that? Is he even thinking through this? I mean, granted, this is what frustrates me again, because none of this matters still at this point, and I'll get into why that's disappointing later. I mean, besides the fact that it makes the whole movie feel like a dream sequence, but I just don't, the way it's framed is just extremely disappointing. But regardless, none of this makes sense, but Ben is just not concerned at all about what happens to the most powerful hypnosis man once he's taken to the police station, because he's literally just going to break out again. But regardless, Ben isn't concerned about that, although I am, and I would at least want to follow through and make sure he's in a safe place. But yep. They get to this, the characters just talk, and they get to this contact's house, and we know this guy's eccentric because he wears an eye patch, and he acts a little funny, which the characters make sure to point out that he's a bit weird, which, okay, whatever. And he tells us that hypnotics control the world, which, okay, I mean, we already could guess. I mean, these are people who literally can do mind control. I would assume they would control the world. I would hope they would, or else I'd be very disappointed in what they're using their powers for. But regardless, Mr. Contact 2 hacks into the government computers, and we find out that Ben Affleck's wife is actually someone who works for the government and for the hypnotic branch of the government, which is, oh no. And he gets sent into another spiral, which we know because he immediately starts looking at pictures of him and his wife on his phone and mopes about it. Oh, I've known her my entire life. What do you mean, man? And we get this really funny shot of Ben Affleck doing his best to fake cry, which is so funny to me because, God, I mean, he really was just getting a bag with this movie. And again, at no point does this movie look $65 million. It looks maybe like 6 or so. I don't know. I mean, how much money does it make to make a made-for-TV level movie? But regardless, Diana comes up to Ben and she's like, I'm going to take a shower. And Ben's like, cool. And then the villain calls, and he tells Ben to kill Diana over the phone using his mind control powers, which this wasn't ever established. Like, where did we establish you can mind control people over the phone? Can I just, like, think about, like, mind controlling someone? Like, not have the phone. Why does the phone matter? Does he have to hear the voice? Could I mind control someone over voicemail? Yeah, if I left a voicemail, could I do that? I don't know. But, like, I couldn't do it over, could I write a letter and have that mailed in my, no, I mean, it probably would need to be my voice, right? So, what if I, like, published a song? Could I mind control people via song and have it played on the radio and, like, make them I don't, like, this is just not established. Like, whatever. But, anyways, Ben Affleck is, like, resisting this. He's like, no, I'm not going to kill her. But the guy tells him that he has to, he's like, you need to shoot her 3 times. But he picks up a pair of scissors, which I thought was established earlier. When you're mind controlled, you need to, you do the exact command. So why does he... See, he's, like, taking liberties with it. He's like, yeah, you know, I heard... I'm mind controlled to the extent that I know you want me to kill her, but I'm actually just going to pick up these scissors, man. He doesn't say that, but I'm just thinking that. Because, like, weren't you doing the... Okay, never mind. But he's strong. He's too strong. And I think they really just wanted this shot of Ben Affleck taking the scissors and just shoving them into the wall. Like, he's going to, like, stab her in the face, but then she opens the door and he stabs the wall, which, like, ooh, I mean, that's edgy. So, regardless, he resists him. And she's like, dude, were you talking to him? No, don't do that. And he's like, I already did. But regardless, they have sex, which, like, cool. Which is kind of weird later, which I'll touch on. But regardless, they have sex, and then Ben Affleck gets out of bed, and he logs onto the computer and finds out that Diana is actually his wife. That's like... Okay, and he was hypnotized to not recognize her. And then he also looks up his daughter, and he finds out daughter is Domino. Dun, dun, like, you know, big twist. I know. So his wife the entire time has been going through with this, and then his daughter... Okay, right. So, we get another lore dump, and we find out that Ben Affleck was actually the one who hid his daughter away. He kidnapped his own daughter away from the government because they wanted to take his daughter, which he's a good father, so he doesn't want the government to take his daughter. And we find out that literally every single thing we watched for this first hour of the movie is fake, and it's not real. And this entire time we've been watching Ben Affleck in a government facility do a fake scavenger hunt because the government is trying to figure out where Ben Affleck put his daughter. And when Ben Affleck... Well, he didn't kidnap his daughter, but he took his daughter and hid her away. And then he wiped his memory. Ben Affleck wiped his own memory so that they couldn't find out where he put her if they tried to mind control him. So they then took Ben Affleck away, and they're like, actually, we're just going to make you do the scavenger hunt with all these triggers that should remind you where your daughter is so you can tell us. Or, like, lead us to her. But, yeah, that's cool. No, it's stupid. And then we're taken through one of the more silly scenes where we see all the sets of where the government set them up for Ben Affleck to do. the scavenger hunt, and essentially, I guess they took his mind, and they were like, when you see this fake bank, you're actually going to see this giant bank, and you're going to believe it. And then we see all the other stuff, which is cool, I guess. So then we see Villain Man, who I guess is head honcho, and Diana works for him, who's his wife, but who works for him, but was pretending to not work for him. Is like, Villain Man's like, hey, Ben, can you just tell us where your daughter is? Because this is our 12th time doing this exact scavenger hunt with you, and you still haven't told us. And Ben's like, well, because he's a boss, he says, well, get ready for number 13. So they wipe his memory again. Nice. So we get taken back to the beginning of the movie where Ben's in therapy. But now the movie's cutting between the scenes we saw in the beginning and now the true scene of, oh, you're in a government facility, which I guess is kind of cool, but not that cool. Which also gets back to what I was wondering earlier, because so when Ben and Diana had sex, was everyone watching? And have they now had sex 12 times? And how consensual is that? And also, is everyone watching them have sex? How does that work? I don't know. Like, that's just what I keep thinking about. I'm just like, so when they were having, okay, you get what I mean. It's just kind of weird. I don't know if I like that. I mean, it's kind of violating. I mean, not as violating as mind control, but it's still kind of weird. And did Ben know everyone was... Yeah, he didn't know everyone was having sex. Like, he didn't know everyone was watching him have sex. That's weird. So, Ben is going through all the motions again, and this part's kind of funny because that scene where Ben thought he was getting into a police car, it's actually just a golf cart, which I think is extremely funny. The idea of someone thinking they're a real cop driving around in a golf cart fighting fake crime. But regardless, we go through the motions, we see the beginning stuff, and in a way that isn't fully explained, Ben just breaks out of the mind control and escapes. And we find out that Leb Del Rain is actually an anagram for Deer Valley Lane, which, whoa, that's where his daughter is. I mean, that's crazy. It's Deer Valley Lane. It's fine Deer Valley Lane. You have a picture of his daughter. How cool is that? But regardless, Ben runs away, and the cops chase after him, and we meet back up with his daughter, and we see her surrounded by a bunch of dominoes because she's Domino, and that's symbolism or something. And we have the cops meet up with these two people, older people, who are Ben's adopted parents in the movie, and they get shot by the cops, which, oh, that's sad. And then his daughter comes out with Ben to greet the cops, and Diana hugs her daughter, where it's revealed that Diana's memory was wiped. And it's actually a plan that Diana and Ben hatched beforehand, because they would wipe Diana's memory, and then she would, thinking she's working for the cops, or I guess the government, which are cops, she would then bring the government to the house, and then they would kill them all. Diana and Ben and his daughter would kill all the cops, which was their plan. So actually, they were 3 steps ahead this entire time, which is cool, I guess. I don't know. But his daughter starts using her mind control powers, which we know because everything gets wavy, and that's the only way you can show mind control is if the camera does a little wonky motion. And the daughter makes the entire government team that came out to their house kill themselves, which I think is quite funny, but it's not that exciting. I mean, it's kind of a letdown. Like, they just there's not even an extended battle scene. They just kill themselves, which is cool, I guess. And we also find out that the adopted parents didn't actually die, which I'm not sure how that works. What were they seeing when they got, I don't know, but they didn't die, which, okay. And they come out, the adopted parents come out guns blazing, kill off the rest of the feds, and Ben Affleck gets into another staring contest with the villain before his daughter intervenes and makes the villain guy kill himself, and everything's good now. Which, great. I mean, what is there to say? I mean, nothing was lost. They didn't lose anything. Main characters didn't lose anything. Ben's back to normal. Diane is back to normal, and the daughter's free, which is great. And the adopted parents are safe. So the good guys lost absolutely nothing, and the bad guys lost everything. Which, I mean, surely there's a lot more cops too. I mean, out there, the whole government. I mean, surely multinational, every government, I mean, across the world, doesn't want them to be alive. Which I'm not saying I want a sequel, but I mean, there's just a lot of issues, and it's mostly just that the daughter there's no caps on her power, and so she's just sort of able to beat everyone. It's sort of, have you ever, well, most people probably haven't, but you're able to, in Pokemon games, to just hack in really strong Pokemon and then just beat the entire game with your level 100 Pokemon versus level 4 Pokemon. And that's just kind of what it's like. It's like if they hacked in their daughter into the world and she's just this level 100 Pokemon and everyone's a level 1. And it's like, well, she's never going to lose. It just kind of feels cheap. If she's not in any danger, then why do I care? Because she's obviously so strong she can beat everyone. So if there's no restrictions to her power, then I guess that's great. She just always wins and they're never in danger. And I think part of what also bothered me is towards the end, when the parents get shot and then they're just brought back, it's just kind of like, I mean, it would have been more emotional if they maybe lost a little bit at the end, but they didn't. Everything worked out perfectly and nothing was lost. I mean, like maybe if the mom died or something, or if it's like they had this plan. A very convoluted plan, by the way, that I didn't like. A lot of steps to go through to just make sure your daughter kills like 20 cops. But regardless, they have this plan, they execute it, and it works out perfectly. And that's that. And nothing of value was lost to them. And so I know I was complaining about the logical issues during the scavenger hunt, and I kind of backtracked on most of them because I think it's clear that in the logic of the movie, nobody is actually in danger in the first 2/3. You know, none of the agents are getting killed. Nobody's in any physical danger because it's all a ruse. It's all fake. And I wish... The issue is that Robert Rodriguez plays this entire part of the movie completely straight. We are supposed to take it seriously because, I mean, it's the issue is that when we're watching that first 2/3, we think it's real. We, the viewer, are supposed to think it's real. And so he plays it so where there can't be any logical issues because otherwise we will start pointing that out. And then if we thought the first 2/3 of the movie was stupid because it's illogical, it's kind of silly for the director to then go back and be like, haha, actually, it was all supposed to be stupid. And so we're supposed to take it completely serious. But we have this issue where I'm watching it and I think the actions are simply illogical. Like, why is he... I mean, if he's just this... super villain, I mean, we're supposed to think he is, who stole his daughter, why does he care so much? I mean, of course we know why after, and that's the issue. I know why the Lev Del Rey guy is supposed to I know why he's making all of those decisions, but in the moment it feels dumb and it feels stupid. And my point is that I wish they had played into that. You know, they're purposely making illogical decisions because they know they're not in danger. They know nothing is real. And play into this fact that Ben Affleck's character thinks he's the smartest guy in the room. He thinks he's the super master cop who's so good at his job. I mean, he doesn't play it off as cocky, but he does play it like he's like Liam Neeson or in Taken or something, where he's this total boss. And like, why not just like have it be, yeah, you know, we're just not going to be completely logical because it's not anything that is actually happening. And if the movie was maybe more self-aware about that, it would be more fun to watch, and it would be more fun to see the little clues dropped. But it just kind of feels like, it just kind of feels stupid. And I think the funniest thing that I read about it is that someone commented on Letterboxd that it feels like a movie in a couple years that their dad is going to watch and be like, that was pretty good, and never think about it again. And that's exactly how it feels. I know so many people who would watch this, think it's like, oh, that's kind of cute, and forget about it, because that's exactly what it is. It's the most disposable, copy-pasted version of a Christopher Nolan movie I have ever seen. And it's so mediocre. I don't know, it's just so silly and bad and not enjoyable at all.